You lean forward as the microphone picks up your first words, aware that those sounds will echo long after you finish speaking. This opening moment, the point where your audience first hears your voice, is where everything begins. A single sentence can spark curiosity, ignite belief, or plant a seed of doubt. Your words are not mere sounds. They are instruments that shape perception and steer action. Today, you will discover how harnessing the true power of speech can transform both your inner world and the world around you. Imagine Abraham Lincoln standing before a divided nation in 1863, grappling with civil war and despair. When he spoke at Gettysburg, his words carried a solemn promise that a government of the people, by the people, for the people would endure. His speech lasted only a few minutes, yet those 30 words, "Government shall not perish from the earth," became the bedrock of national identity. Lincoln knew that language, measured and deliberate, could heal wounds and forge unity out of chaos. Now, picture yourself in a modern boardroom. You present an idea that could revolutionize your company's product line. Your hands tremble slightly as you begin, yet you choose each phrase with intention. Instead of saying, "I think this might work," you assert, "This strategy will increase market share by 30%. That shift from tentative to confident flips a switch in your listeners' minds. Suddenly, they see potential, not risk. In both moments, Lincoln at Gettysburg and you pitching your concept, the power lies not in the facts alone, but in the way those facts are framed through speech. It's tempting to dismiss everyday conversation as trivial, but countless success stories owe their start to a single phrase: the plea that won a hesitant investor, the thank you that forged a lasting partnership, the apology that mended a fractured friendship. Words carry the weight of intention. When you speak purposefully, you align your inner conviction with your outer message. You become an architect of reality, constructing bridges or barriers with equal facility. Before we dive deeper, take a breath and notice the silence that follows this introduction. That pause is not empty space. It is fertile ground where your audience processes what they've heard, lean-hudding in, waiting for the next revelation. Silence and speech dance together, each amplifying the other's impact. From here, we will journey through the art of wielding speech as a tool for influence, connection, and transformation. You will learn to choose words that resonate, to modulate tone that commands attention, and to craft messages that leave an indelible mark. By the end of our narrative, you won't just understand the power of speech, you will embody it. Power of speech. Your words are the first invitation into your world. Every conversation, presentation, or casual comment carries an undercurrent of intention that seeps into the minds of listeners. Effective speakers recognize that communication is less about transmitting information and more about creating an experience. They design every sentence to build momentum, to tap into emotion, and to guide perception. Consider the science behind it. Listeners process vocal tone and language through parallel channels in the brain. A confident tone paired with precise language triggers neural circuits linked to trust and motivation. Conversely, hesitant phrasing and flat delivery shut down engagement. The key, then, is aligning your mind's conviction with the clarity of your speech. When your internal belief and external expression sync, your message becomes magnetic. Developing this alignment begins with self-awareness. Before you speak, pause to calibrate your emotional state. Are you anxious? Channel that energy into passion for your topic. Are you doubtful? Replace self-criticism with affirmations of competence. By managing your inner dialogue, you set the stage for authentic, powerful delivery. Next, audience awareness is crucial. Great orators study their listeners, their hopes, fears, and language patterns. Tailoring your vocabulary and examples to resonate with their experiences creates an instant bond. Lincoln did this by echoing familiar phrases 7 years ago to tie his vision to the nation's founding legacy. Finally, practice turns theory into habit. Record yourself delivering a brief manifesto of your core beliefs. Listen back for filler words, tonal dips, or rushed phrasing. Replace weak qualifiers, maybe, sort of, with decisive language. Definitely, absolutely. Over time, these adjustments become second nature. The ripple effect of mastering speech extends beyond public addresses. It influences your relationships, career trajectory, and even self-perception. Speaking with clarity reinforces confidence. Confidence fuels action. Action begets results. Before long, you'll find that others naturally gravitate to your perspective, trusting your guidance and championing your vision. As you prepare for the next purposeful speech, consider one question. What story do you want your words to tell? Reflect on this. The answer will set the tone for every interaction you have moving forward. You lean back in your chair, feeling the weight of expectations settle in your chest. Every sentence you speak carries the imprint of your intention, each word, a deliberate brushstroke on the canvas of perception. Purposeful speech is not merely about conveying information. It's about sculpting meaning, directing focus, and shaping belief. When you speak with intention, your message resonates far beyond the sound waves it creates, embedding itself in hearts and minds. Imagine Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. standing at the Lincoln Memorial in August 1963. He did not simply recite a string of eloquent phrases. He crafted each sentence to inspire a nation. When he declared, "I have a dream," those words weren't spontaneous. They were the culmination of months of reflection and careful choice, designed to evoke empathy, moral urgency, and hope. Every pause, every rising cadence, and every repetition served a precise purpose: to unite, to uplift, and to move listeners from passive agreement to active engagement. You too can harness that level of intentionality in everyday conversations. First, identify your core objective. Are you aiming to persuade, to inform, to comfort, or to challenge? Without clarity on your goal, your speech risks wandering in tangents or diluting its impact. Before uttering a single syllable, ask yourself, what do I want my audience to feel, think, or do when I finish speaking? That simple internal question becomes your North Star, guiding the structure, tone, and content of your message. Next, structure your message around that objective. Purposeful speech follows a clear trajectory, beginning with a hook that grabs attention, followed by a logical progression of ideas, and culminating in a decisive call to action or conclusion. For instance, if you're presenting a proposal to your team, start with a compelling statement of the problem. Illustrate the stakes through vivid examples. Introduce your solution, and then close by specifying the next steps. This narrative arc keeps listeners engaged, anticipating each transition. Word choice is your most powerful ally in purposeful speech. Select verbs that carry energy: ignite instead of start, transform instead of change. Avoid passive constructions that diffuse responsibility. Mistakes were made, and opt for active phrasing that assigns accountability. I made a mistake. Trim extraneous qualifiers like just, maybe, or I think, as they undermine authority. When every word serves the core message, the speech feels lean, dynamic, and impossible to ignore. Tone modulation further amplifies intention. Your vocal pitch, pace, and volume convey emotional undercurrents that words alone cannot. Slowing down before a key point builds anticipation. Raising volume on the climax ignites excitement. Dropping to a softer register for a transition commands listeners' ears. As you develop purposeful speech, practice these shifts deliberately. Record yourself reading a short, persuasive script, then experiment with pacing and pitch until each change aligns with the message's emotional contour. Active listening is equally crucial. Purposeful speakers are not monologues in search of an audience. They are dialogues in which feedback flows both ways. Pay attention to nonverbal cues: nods, furrowed brows, shifting postures. If you notice confusion, clarify. If you sense enthusiasm, lean into it. By adjusting on the fly, you sustain engagement and ensure your intention aligns with the audience's evolving needs. Consider a modern illustration from the tech world. When Steve Jobs introduced the original iPhone in 2007, he could have delivered a dry list of technical specifications. Instead, he told a story about the future of communication and personal computing, weaving in humor, wonder, and dramatic reveals. Each word was chosen to build suspense. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone, and every pause served to let the revelation sink in. The result was not a product launch. it was a cultural event that reshaped an industry. To practice purposeful speech in your daily life, start small. Before a meeting, identify one key message you want your colleagues to remember. Craft a single sentence encapsulating that message, then weave it into your opening remarks. During social conversations, notice when you drift into aimless chatter and gently steer the topic back to something meaningful. With each intentional turn, you train your mind to speak with clarity and impact. Reflection cements these gains. After any significant speaking engagement, whether a team update or a family discussion, ask yourself, did I achieve my objective? Review what worked, the phrases that drew nods, the metaphors that sparked light bulb moments. Note what fell flat, the points that prompted blank stares or wanderlust. Incorporate these lessons into your mental toolkit, refining your approach until purposeful speech becomes second nature. By living with intention in dialogue, you elevate every interaction. When colleagues hear your words, they hear conviction. When friends seek your counsel, they trust your insights. When strangers cross your path, they remember the power behind your phrasing. Purposeful speech transcends mere talk. It shapes identity, forges bonds, and moves the world. As you prepare to explore the next chapter, silence as strength, consider this. Sometimes the most purposeful word you will ever speak is the one you choose not to speak. At the heart of speaking with intention lies a simple truth. Every word matters. By defining your goal, structuring your message, choosing precise language, modulating tone, and listening actively, you transform speech from noise into influence. This is the art of purposeful speech. You pause before speaking, feeling the quiet swell in the room like the calm before a storm. That momentary hush is not emptiness, it is power waiting to be unleashed. Silence gives your words gravity, offers space for thought, and signals confidence. When you wield silence strategically, you command attention, control the tempo of interaction, and create emotional resonance stronger than any flood of words. Consider Mahatma Gandhi during negotiations for India's independence. Facing British officials who wielded centuries of political dominance, he often sat in deliberate silence, allowing their impatience to rise. Those pauses forced opponents to reveal their own intentions, frustrations, and vulnerabilities. Gandhi's silence was not passive, was a tactical choice that shifted the balance of power. In that quiet, he demonstrated inner strength and unflappable resolve, compelling British negotiators to engage on his terms. Silence first demands self-discipline. In conversation, our impulse is to fill every gap with chatter-toe, soothe discomfort, or prove our intelligence. Yet over-talking can dilute your message, erode your authority, and exhaust listeners. To train yourself, practice the 3-breath rule. Before responding, inhale and exhale 3 times. During those breaths, gather your thoughts, choose the most precise words, and prepare to deliver with intent. You may feel vulnerability in the pause, but that vulnerability is the gateway to authenticity. When you resist the urge to fill silence, you reveal confidence in your own presence. Next, recognize silence's role as a listening tool. Genuine listening requires mental stillness. When a colleague describes a challenge at work, instead of immediately jumping in with solutions, remain silent after they finish speaking. That silence communicates respect and gives them permission to share deeper emotions or facts they might otherwise withhold. Often, what emerges in the pause is the true root of the problem. By listening through silence, you become not only a more empathetic communicator, but also a more effective problem solver. Silence also functions as an emotional regulator. When anger or frustration surges, speaking hastily can inflame tensions and cause regret. Instead, pause, let the feeling peak, and then respond from a place of calm. Picture a tense family dinner where a minor criticism threatens to escalate into a heated argument. You feel anger rising but choose silence. Instead of lashing out, you breathe, reflect on the underlying issue, perhaps stress from work, and then guide the conversation toward understanding. That composed silence diffuses conflict and invites constructive dialogue. In high-stakes negotiations, a well-timed silence can be your greatest ally. Imagine you're discussing a contract extension and the other party proposes a concession you find unacceptable. Instead of immediately rejecting it, which could shut down talks, remain silent. let the discomfort hang in the air. Negotiators trained in silence know that humans hate unresolved tension. The opposing side will often fill the void by improving their offer, offering concessions they might not have otherwise made. Your silence becomes a subtle lever that tilts the negotiation in your favor. Silence strengthens your narrative by creating contrast. Speech, like music, relies on pauses to highlight key moments. When you tell a story, insert brief silences before and after pivotal lines. Those pauses let the audience absorb the significance, evoking anticipation or reflection. In a public speech, you might say, "And then everything changed," and wait a beat before revealing the turning point. That hush draws listeners in, as their minds race to imagine what comes next. Silence, in this way, transforms words into suspenseful drama. To incorporate strategic silence into your daily interactions, begin by observing natural conversational rhythms. Notice how often you interrupt yourself or others. Aim to extend pauses by just half a second silence, so brief it feels almost unnoticeable. Over days, gradually stretch those pauses to a full second. You'll find that even a 1-second silence carries weight, making your next words more impactful. Journal your experiences. Record when silence shifted the dynamic, how others reacted, and how you felt in the moment. Silence is also a tool for introspection. At the end of a busy day, carve out silent moments to review your thoughts. Sit quietly and let memories of the day surface without judgment. In that stillness, insights often emerge, patterns in your behavior, triggers of stress, or ideas for improvement. Many successful entrepreneurs and leaders credit silent reflection as the source of their greatest breakthroughs. Mother Teresa, for example, spent hours each morning in silent prayer, attributing her ability to serve others to the clarity and compassion she found in stillness. Yet silence must be balanced with speech. Too much silence can feel cold or aloof, causing others to misinterpret your intentions. Learn to read social cues, body language, eye contact, facial expressions to determine when to break the silence with warmth or reassurance. A gentle statement like, "I appreciate you sharing that," can bridge the quiet and maintain connection. Silence should never abandon empathy. It should enhance it by making each spoken word more deliberate. Integrating silence into storytelling cements your narrative authority. When you frame a personal anecdote, perhaps the moment you realized your own words had healed a friend's hurt, pause before revealing the outcome. That silence heightens emotional engagement, drawing listeners deeper into your journey. And when you speak the resolution, your words ring with authenticity and power. As we move forward to explore mastering thoughts, keep in mind, silence is not absence, but presence. It is the space where meaning forms and authority takes root. By mastering silence, you amplify your speech, sharpen your listening, and command every room you enter. Silence yields power. Embrace I-Tand Watch as your voice resonates more deeply than ever before. Your mind buzzes like a crowded marketplace, stalls of thoughts calling out for attention. Each mental fragment worries about deadlines, plans for dinner, flashbacks of past conversations competes for your focus. Yet beneath that cacophony lies a quieter realm where you hold the reins. Mastering thoughts means learning to observe those mental events without getting swept away by them, then reshaping them to align with your goals. As you do, you reclaim mental clarity, emotional stability, and creative power. Imagine how Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, began each morning by reviewing his internal landscape. He wrote in his meditations that one's mind can be either a prison or a sanctuary. By training himself to notice destructive thoughts, envy, anger, self-doubt, and replace them with reasoned reflections, he governed both an empire and his own psyche. When invading tribes threatened Rome's frontier, Marcus maintained calm resolve not by denying fear, but by acknowledging it and choosing a rational response. His secret: consistent self-awareness and deliberate reframing. Start your own practice by carving out 3 daily mind scans. Set gentle alarms mid-morning, mid-afternoon, and before bed. When the alarm sounds, pause and note your current thought loop without judgment. Label it: planning, worrying, replaying, or dreaming. This simple act of naming creates mental distance, a buffer between you and the thought. Neuroscientists call this cognitive diffusion, and it interrupts automatic emotional reactions. By observing rather than identifying with your thoughts, you reduce their power to hijack your mood. Next, learn to challenge unhelpful narratives. Suppose you catch yourself thinking, "I always mess up public speaking." Rather than accepting that as fact, interrogate it. Always? Didn't I receive praise for my last presentation? Recall concrete evidence-positive feedback. Confident momento counterbalance the negative storyline. Then craft a balanced statement. I've stumbled before, but I've also succeeded. I can prepare and improve. That reframed belief shapes future performance. Your brain begins to search for success patterns rather than failure traps. Visualization is another potent tool. Olympic athletes like Michael Phelps rehearse every stroke in their mind before entering the pool. In your own arena, whether delivering a speech, negotiating a deal, or navigating a difficult conversation, practice vividly imagining each step. See the environment, hear your voice, sense the confidence in your body. Mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways, making your desired outcome feel familiar. When the real moment arrives, your brain recalls the rehearsal as muscle memory, reducing anxiety and boosting performance. Mindful breathing anchors you to the present. Whenever you feel thoughts spiraling into worry or rumination, shift attention to the physical rhythm of inhalation and exhalation. Follow the air as it fills your lungs, then exits. Even a single minute of focused breathing engages the parasympathetic nervous system, calming stress responses. With consistent practice, that 1-minute refuge becomes a mental reset button you can press any time before a tough meeting, after a conflict, or in the middle of creative work. Journaling cements your progress. At the end of each day, write 3 sentences. The most disruptive thought you noticed, the reframed alternative you chose, and 1 insight gleaned. Over weeks, patterns emerge, recurring worries, triggers, or resilience strategies that work best. Marcus Aurelius recorded his philosophical epiphanies to guide future behavior. You too collect data on your inner workings, refining your mastery over time. Consider a modern case from Silicon Valley. A startup founder named Maya discovered her imposter syndrome sabotaging investor pitches. Before every meeting, she ran a mental checklist of her accomplishments, then visualized herself speaking with conviction. When doubts surfaced mid-presentation, "They'll see I don't belong," she paused, breathed deeply, and reminded herself of her data-driven results. That split-second shift stabilized her tone, impressed investors, and raised her funding by 40%. Maya's story shows how mastering thoughts empowers real-world success. Another dimension of thought mastery is embracing curiosity over judgment. When a surprising idea or criticism arises, resist labeling it stupid or threatening. Instead, ask, "What can I learn from this?" That question turns mental resistance into exploration. Many breakthroughs begin as unexpected suggestions, dismissed by habitual thinking patterns. By welcoming novelty, you expand your cognitive horizons and foster innovative solutions. As your practice deepens, mental clarity becomes second nature. You notice that worries no longer hijack your mornings, that creative insights surface during routine tasks, and that emotional storms calm more quickly. Your inner voice shifts from a harsh critic to a constructive coach. You navigate challenges not by suppressing thoughts, but by guiding them toward productive channels. Finally, integrate thought mastery into your storytelling. When you narrate an anecdote about overcoming self-doubt, perhaps standing on stage despite trembling hands pause to share the inner dialogue, the fear that rose, then the calming breath and reframed belief that carried you through. That candid glimpse into mental processes deepens audience connection and models the very technique you advocate. Mastering thoughts is not a one-time event, it's a lifelong discipline. By observing mind scans, challenging narratives, visualizing success, practicing mindful breathing, and journaling insights, you transform mental chaos into clarity. This sanctuary of the mind becomes the foundation for resilient action, creative problem-solving, and authentic communication. As we turn to the next Focus and Clarity, carry this question with you. How will you guide your next thought to serve your highest purpose? You sit at your desk, the glow of the monitor revealing a world of tasks clamoring for your attention. Emails ping, messages flash, and a constant tug of micro-distractions threatens to fracture your concentration. Yet beneath this whirlwind of stimuli, you can carve out a path of laser focus. Clarity begins with defining what matters most, then engineering your environment and routines to channel mental energy toward that priority. In doing so, you transform scattered effort into sustained momentum. Begin by identifying your North Star objective for the day. Before opening any application or glancing at the clock, ask yourself, what outcome today will move me closest to my long-term goal? It might be drafting a crucial proposal, rehearsing a presentation, or outlining a creative script. Write that objective on a sticky note. Place it beside your keyboard and revisit it whenever temptations arise. Grounding your actions in a singular purpose aligns your choices and preserves mental bandwidth for meaningful work. Historical innovators understood the power of such clarity. Consider Leonardo da Vinci as he sketched designs for flying machines. He faced countless technical challenges, yet his notebooks reveal a disciplined focus on fundamental principles: lift, balance, and motive force. Da Vinci isolated one problem at a time, often working in bursts of intense concentration, then stepping back to reflect. By narrowing his scope, he pushed beyond contemporary limits and imagined possibilities still unrealized centuries later. Next, design your environment for focus. Declutter your workspace, remove visual noise, and silence non-essential notifications. Turn your phone to Do Not Disturb. Or better yet, place it in another room. Use noise, canceling headphones or ambient sound apps to shield against auditory interruptions. Every visible icon, every flashing alert, and every open tab competes for attention. By eliminating these contenders, you free your mind to immerse itself in the task at hand. Time blocking amplifies this effect. Divide your day into focused intervals, serially 60 to 90 minutes each, dedicated to a single activity aligned with your North Star objective. During these blocks, resist the urge to multitask. Research shows that context switching can cost up to 40% of productive time. Instead, commit to one thread of work until the timer signals a break. When the interval ends, stand, stretch, and briefly shift mental gears before the next block. These mindful pauses replenish your cognitive resources and sustain high performance throughout the day. Modern examples of time block mastery abound in tech circles. At Google, many engineers adopt the maker's schedule, carving mornings into uninterrupted slots for coding and design. Meetings and administrative tasks are consolidated into afternoons when creative energy naturally dips. This deliberate separation ensures that deep work writing algorithms, crafting user interfaces, or authoring article soccers when mental freshness is paramount. Third, cultivate rituals that prime your focus. Rituals anchor the mind, signaling the transition into a state of concentration. Perhaps you start each session with 3 minutes of mindful breathing, aligning body and mind. Or you review your sticky note objective aloud, recommitting to the day's purpose. Some professionals prepare a focus playlist of instrumental tracks that cue the brain to enter flow. Whatever form your ritual takes, repeat it consistently so the very act of preparing becomes a mental trigger for immersion. Fourth, embrace strategic monotasking. While multitasking feels productive, it fragments attention and heightens cognitive load. Instead, honor the rhythm of monotasking. Give your full mental presence to one project until completion or a defined stopping point. If another idea intrudes, jot it down on a separate notepad for later review, then return to your current thread. This practice prevents mental drift and honors the brain's natural appetite for coherence. Examples of monotasking's power emerge from scientific discovery. When Marie Curie isolated radium in her Paris laboratory, she devoted months to painstaking measurements, repeating experiments with unwavering persistence. She did not flit between unrelated projects. Instead, she committed each workday to her research, fueled by clarity of purpose and an environment optimized for concentration. Her singular focus yielded breakthroughs that revolutionized medicine and physics. Finally, cultivate meta-awareness of your attention. Periodically scan your mental state. Are you slack, jawed, staring blankly at the screen, or fully engaged? When focus wanes, briefly practice the 5-finger technique. Touch each finger in sequence, naming one senses sight, sound, touch, taste, smell as you go. This rapid sensory grounding recalibrates your awareness and snaps you back to the present moment. It's a micro-reset that interrupts drifting thoughts without breaking workflow. To integrate these strategies, track your focus score each day. At the end of sunset, rate your concentration on a scale from 1 to 10. Note which techniques you applied and where you faltered. Over weeks, you'll discern patterns. Perhaps morning time blocks yield peak flow, or music-assisted rituals boost midday productivity. Use these insights to refine your approach, steadily raising your average focus score. Focus and clarity are not innate gifts. They are engineered states. By defining a clear objective, sculpting your environment, employing time blocks, ritualizing your start, honoring monotasking, and grounding attention, you amplify your capacity for deep work. This disciplined architecture transforms fleeting attention into enduring results. As you prepare to explore positive mindset, remember, clarity provides the lens through which positive thinking magnifies progress. You awaken to the same challenges as yesterday deadlines looming, unexpected setbacks, and the chatter of doubt. Yet today feels different. Beneath the familiar pressures, you sense an undercurrent of possibility. That shift springs from your mindset. A positive mindset does more than chase away gloom. It transforms obstacles into opportunities, fuels resilience, and reframes your narrative. When optimism becomes your default lens, you unlock creative solutions, deepen relationships, and sustain momentum through adversity. Consider Viktor Frankl, who endured unimaginable hardship in Nazi concentration camps. He observed that prisoners who maintained hope, who believed in a purpose beyond the barbed wire, suffered less psychological damage than those consumed by despair. Frankl later wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude. That freedom, exercised in the darkest circumstances, illuminates the profound power of mindset. Begin by identifying your dominant thought patterns. Over the next 3 days, notice when you label events as good or bad. Record each instance in a simple log: the event, your initial appraisal, and an alternative framing. For example, if a client rejects your proposal, your first reaction might be failure. Then reframe: feedback I can use to refine my approach. This exercise rewires your brain to seek constructive angles instead of fixating on negatives. Next, cultivate gratitude as a daily practice. Gratitude does not require grand gestures. It thrives in small moments. Each morning, list 3 things you genuinely appreciate. Perhaps the crisp aroma of coffee, a colleague's encouragement, or a line from your favorite song. Spend 30 seconds reflecting on why each item matters. Neuroscientists have linked gratitude journaling to increased dopamine and serotonin levels, neurochemicals that boost mood and motivation. Over time, this practice shifts your baseline from what's missing to what's abundant. Visualization deepens your positive mindset. Olympians mentally rehearse gold medal performances. Entrepreneurs envision successful launches. Artists imagine standing ovations. At the end of each day, close your eyes and replay moments when you performed at your best. See the scene in vivid detail colors, sounds, even sense and feel the pride, confidence, and joy. That neural rehearsal strengthens associations between effort and positive outcomes, priming your brain to seek excellence. Language shapes thought. Replace phrases like "I can't" or "I have to" with "I choose to" and "I get to." This subtle shift reclaims agency, reminding you that your actions flow from intention, not obligation. Instead of saying, "I have to prepare this report," say, "I choose to craft this report to inform my team." The latter wording sparks engagement by emphasizing purpose over burden. Surround yourself with positivity triggers. Curate a playlist of uplifting music, Post motivational quotes in your workspace, or schedule weekly calls with optimistic colleagues. These environmental cues provide micro-reinforcements throughout your day. When negativity creeps in, a familiar Quaya song lyric, a vivid image rekindles your positive pattern. Now, examine how positive mindset thrives under pressure. Imagine a startup founder facing a product launch delay that threatens investor confidence. Instead of succumbing to panic, she reframes the setback as extra time to refine features. She communicates this perspective to her team. This delay is an opportunity to exceed expectations. That belief shapes their actions, quality improves, morale stays high, and investors, impressed by transparent optimism, extend support. By choosing a positive stance, she shifted the entire outcome. Embrace challenges as growth opportunities. When encountering complex problems, ask, "What can I learn?" Even failures carry lessons that fuel future success. Thomas Edison famously embraced thousands of unsuccessful experiments as steps toward the incandescent light bulb. His mindset, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work," exemplifies how optimism sparks relentless innovation. A positive mindset also demands self-compassion. When you stumble, respond with kindness instead of criticism. If you botch a presentation, avoid harsh self-talk. Instead, note what went well. Perhaps your research was thorough, then identify one tweak for next time. This balanced feedback loop sustains motivation by pairing celebration with constructive improvement. Physical habits reinforce mental patterns. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, and balanced nutrition support mood regulation and cognitive clarity. When you feel sluggish, your mind defaults to pessimism. By prioritizing movement, even a 10-minute walk, you boost endorphins and restore energy. Combine movement with gratitude or visualization. Listen to an inspiring podcast while walking, or reflect on your morning affirmations during a jog. As you integrate these practices, track your optimism index. Each evening, rate your overall mindset from 1 to 10 and note which strategies you used: gratitude, journaling, reframing, visualization, or environment cues. Over weeks, patterns emerge. Maybe morning gratitude yields your best scores, or perhaps environment cues matter most during the afternoon slump. Use these insights to refine your approach. Finally, weave positive mindset into your storytelling. When sharing a personal anecdote, like turning a career setback into a creative pivot, pause to reveal your internal dialogue, the moment you chose hope over defeat. That vulnerability deepens audience empathy and models how optimism transforms reality. Positive mindset is not naive cheerfulness. It is a strategic choice to focus on solutions, learn from adversity, and cultivate resilience. By consciously reframing events, practicing gratitude, visualizing success, using empowering language, and reinforcing habits, you reshape not only your experience, but also your outcomes. As we transition to emotional control, ask yourself, how will you harness optimism to navigate your next emotional challenge? Your heart pounds as you face a tense negotiation, the other party's demands pressing like a vice around your shoulders. Anger flickers at the edges of your mind, a familiar signal that something feels unfair. Yet before you let that flame ignite into an outburst, you recognize a deeper truth. Emotions are powerful messengers, not masters. To wield emotional control is to acknowledge those signals, understand their origins, and choose a calibrated response that aligns with your highest purpose. This skill reshapes conflict into collaboration, turmoil into clarity, and reactivity into mindful action. Consider Nelson Mandela's long years on Robben Island. Isolated and subjected to harsh treatment, he endured forced labor, deprivation, and the constant threat of violence, yet he emerged with an unbroken spirit. Mandela credited his resilience to a deliberate practice of emotional regulation. When bitterness rose, he reframed his suffering as a crucible for empathy. Imagining the humanity of his jailers and envisioning a united South Africa, instead of lashing out, he listened, learned Afrikaans to understand his captors, and maintained composure under provocation. In doing so, he shifted from prisoner to bridge builder, orchestrating reconciliation that few believed possible. Begin your own practice by building an emotional pause. When you sense strong feelings, anger, anxiety, or shame, pause before responding. Take a slow, deliberate breath, allowing a moment of stillness to interrupt the impulse. In that gap, ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me? What outcome do I truly want? Labeling emotions. I feel frustration. I notice anxiety creates cognitive distance, activating the prefrontal cortex to guide thoughtful action rather than the amygdala's fight or flight reflex. Next, delve into the root causes. Emotions rarely originate from present events alone. They echo past experiences and unmet needs. If you catch yourself seething after a colleague's harsh critique, reflect, is this about the feedback itself or a deeper fear of rejection? Perhaps an earlier childhood memory of being dismissed resurfaces. By tracing emotions to their source, you demystify them, reducing their power to hijack your behavior. Journaling this exploration solidifies insights. Record the trigger, the felt sensation in your body, the underlying belief, and a constructive reframe. Over time, you'll spot recurring patterns, a roadmap for targeted growth. Emotion regulation thrives on self-soothing rituals. Identify sensory anchors that calm your nervous system. A short walk to feel the breeze on your skin, listening to a specific song that evokes peace, or pressing your fingertips against your palm while inhaling slowly. When emotions surge, deploy these anchors before speaking or deciding. A sales director I know faced a hostile client who slammed the phone down mid-presentation. Instead of retaliating, she quietly pressed her fingertips together, reviewed her core value of professionalism, and redialed with measured composure. The client, surprised by her calm, apologized and reconvened with a friendlier tone. Empathy toward others deepens emotional control. When someone lashes out at you, consider the stresses. They may carry their own deadlines, personal challenges, or health worries. By shifting perspective from offense to understanding, you diffuse conflict and open channels for dialogue. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, President John F. Kennedy recognized Khrushchev's public pressure and the Soviet leaders' fears of NATO aggression. Rather than responding with escalatory rhetoric, Kennedy engaged discreet back-channel discussions, acknowledging Soviet security concerns. This empathetic restraint helped avert nuclear confrontation. Cultivating emotional vocabulary enhances clarity. Many communicate through raw impulses, yelling, shutting down, or sarcasm because they lack precise words for their inner states. Expand your lexicon. Beyond angry, consider irritated, resentful, or disappointed. Instead of upset, differentiate anxious, hurt, or overwhelmed. When you articulate your feelings specifically, I feel disrespected by that comment. You invite constructive conversation rather than defensive reactions. Practice in low-stakes settings. Share with a trusted friend or in personal reflection until naming emotions feels natural. Self-compassion forms another pillar. Holding yourself to impossible standards breeds chronic self-criticism, which amplifies negative emotions. When you falter, speak to yourself as you would to a friend. Acknowledge the mistake, express kindness, and identify a path forward. Olympic swimmer Katie Ledecky, renowned for her calm under pressure, credits part of her success to treating herself with compassion after each race win or lose. That kindness reduces performance anxiety, allowing her to approach each competition with fresh confidence. Monitor your physiological cues. Emotions manifest physically. A tight jaw signals tension. A fluttering chest hints at anxiety. A pounding forehead indicates overwhelm. By noting these bodily changes in real time, you gain early warning of emotional escalation. During a heated family discussion, if you feel your shoulders stiffen and jaw clench, deliberately relax your muscles and exhale in a 4-step pattern. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. This box breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, counteracting stress and restoring balance. Implement structured reflection to reinforce growth. At week's end, review moments when emotions ran high and note both successes and slip-ups. Chart the triggers, your applied techniques, and the outcomes. Celebrate instances of mastery perhaps. You navigated a board meeting without getting defensive and analyze lapses for new strategies. This iterative feedback loop transforms emotional control from a reactive fix into a proactive discipline. Emotional control also shapes your storytelling impact. When you share a narrative about facing betrayal, maybe a trusted partner's sudden withdrawal pause to describe the surge of hurt, then reveal how you harnessed that pain to set healthy boundaries. That emotional arc not only illustrates the technique, but invites listeners to witness your authentic journey, forging deeper connection. Finally, recognize that emotions are neither good nor bad. They are information, rich signals pointing to values, needs, and priorities. By mastering them, you align your actions with your deepest intentions. Embrace each emotional wave as an ally, guiding you toward authenticity and purpose. As we transition to respond, don't react, carry this question with you. How will you transform your next emotional impulse into a deliberate response? The moment a sharp comment lands, whether in a meeting or over coffee, your chest tightens and your gut churns. Every fiber of your being cries out to defend, to push back, to react. Yet if you yield to that impulse, you step into a cycle of escalation where words spiral into conflict and relationships fracture. Instead, choose to respond, pause, assess, and then speak with intention. When you learn to respond rather than react, you transform potential conflict into constructive dialogue, forging respect and preserving your integrity. Imagine Oprah Winfrey interviewing a guest who abruptly dismisses her line of questioning. In that high-stakes environment, she never snaps back. Instead, she waits for the guest's tone to settle, then says, "I appreciate your honesty. Help me understand your perspective." That measured response shifts the dynamic. Curiosity replaces confrontation, trust grows, and the conversation deepens. Oprah's skillful steering illustrates how a thoughtful response disarms tension and invites collaboration. Begin by recognizing your reaction triggers. Keep a simple log. Note moments when you felt the urge to interrupt, defend, or lash out. Record the context, who spoke, what was said, the situation, and your immediate impulse. Over days, patterns will emerge. Perhaps certain topics, voices, or power dynamics consistently trigger reactive urges. Awareness of these triggers is the first step toward interruption. Next, practice the stop, label, choose sequence. When you feel an emotional surge, stop, internally press a mental break. Take a single, full breath, feeling air fill your lungs. Label. Silently name the felt emotion. Anger, hurt, anxiety. Labeling activates the analytical part of your brain, giving you space from the raw feeling. Choose. Decide on a deliberate response. Ask yourself, what outcome do I want here? And what tone and words will achieve that? By embedding this mini routine into your reactions, you create a gap between trigger and action where choice resides. That gap grows with practice, eventually becoming your default mode. Role play reinforces these skills. With a trusted friend or colleague, simulate challenging scenarios, an irate client complaint, a brusque manager critique, or a personal betrayal. Script the exchanges, then swap roles. After each round, debrief. What triggered reactivity? How well did you label and choose? What alternative responses emerged? Over time, these rehearsals build muscle memory for real-life conversations, making thoughtful responses instinctive. Consider a contemporary example in customer service. A hospitality manager receives a scathing online review that misrepresents the guest's experience. Instead of firing off a defensive public reply, she drafts a calm, empathetic note. "Thank you for sharing your feedback. I'm sorry we fell short. Could you tell me more about what happened so we can make it right?" That response acknowledges the customer's feelings, invites dialogue, and demonstrates professionalism, often turning critics into loyal patrons. Language choice further refines responses. Replace "you're wrong" with "I see a different lie, let me explain." Swap "calm down," which inflames, with "I hear your frustration. Can we explore solutions together?" Use "I" statements. "I felt surprised when I heard that," to own your perspective without blaming. These subtle shifts convey respect, maintain rapport, and steer the conversation toward resolution. Tone modulation amplifies your chosen response. A neutral, even soft volume reassures. A steady pace communicates control. Avoid rapid-fire speech, which signals impatience. Avoid overly slow cadences that come across as condescension. Practice recording responses to a provocative prompt. Your idea is naive, and listen back. Adjust pitch, pace, and emphasis until your voice aligns with respect and sincerity. Active listening completes the cycle. After your measured response, truly listen. Allow the other party to speak, matching their pace and mirroring key words to show understanding. Paraphrase. It sounds like you're saying, this technique validates their perspective and uncovers the root issue. Instead of defending a position, you co-create solutions. When negotiators in high-stakes diplomacy shift from accusation to inquiry asking questions rather than trading barbs, they unlock possibilities for compromise and peace. A modern illustration of respond, don't react emerges from startup culture. During a heated product review meeting, a developer publicly criticizes the design lead's mock-ups. The design lead feels blindsided. Every instinct demands retaliation. Instead, she pauses, thanks her colleague for honest feedback, and asks, which aspect concerns you most? That response acknowledges the critique, invites specificity, and transforms a public rebuke into collaborative problem-solving. The team appreciates her composure, and the revised design integrates the best of both perspectives. To deepen your skill, set micro-challenges. At your next team meeting, commit to responding thoughtfully at least once. Consciously apply stop, label, choose, then speak. Afterward, journal the outcome and how you felt. Over weeks, increase the challenge. Respond rather than react in personal conversations, social media comments, or even internal self-talk when facing setbacks. These deliberate experiments build your resilience and refine your conversational artistry. Monitor your progress by tracking response quality. Each evening, ask yourself, in how many challenging moments did I choose a thoughtful response? Rate each incident from 1 to 5 and note the techniques applied. Over time, patterns emerge, perhaps labeling proves most powerful, or tone modulation needs more practice. Use these insights to tailor your next week's focus. Integrate storytelling to model the skill. When recounting a personal anecdote, say, a betrayal that once hurt, deeply pause to share the moment you chose your response, the breath you took, the words you selected, the questions you asked. That narrative not only illustrates the technique, but invites listeners to experience the transformation firsthand. Responding instead of reacting preserves relationships, elevates your leadership, and fortifies your self-respect. Each intentional reply signals maturity, fuels collaboration, and reduces the emotional toll of conflict. As you practice, the gap between impulse and action widens, giving rise to a more mindful, influential you. As we move to setting boundaries, consider, in your next challenging exchange, how will you honor your needs without sacrificing connection? The air grows tense when demands exceed your comfort zone, when colleagues pile tasks on your to-do list, friends drop by unannounced, or family members press you into unwanted obligations. In those moments, your instinct may be to accommodate to avoid conflict or disappointment, yet overextending yourself erodes energy, focus, and self-respect. Setting boundaries is the art of protecting your time, values, and emotional well-being by clearly communicating what you will and will not accept. When you honor your own limits, you cultivate healthier relationships built on mutual respect. Imagine Brené Brown standing before a packed auditorium, sharing her research on vulnerability. She could have glossed over the risks of openness, but instead she asserted, I will share my own stories, but I reserve the right to set my pace and depth. By defining what she would reveal and when, she modeled boundaries that empowered her audience to engage authentically without fear of oversharing. Her clarity invited people in, yet respected her own thresholds. Begin your practice by identifying your core values, those non-negotiables that define who you are. Values might include integrity, creativity, family time, or personal growth. Reflect on recent moments of stress or resentment. What value felt compromised? If a manager demands late-night deliverables, perhaps your value of work-life balance was at stake. By pinpointing the underlying value, you clarify why a boundary matters, giving you conviction when communicating it. Next, craft boundary statements using I language. Rather than saying, "You're always dumping work on me," frame it as, "I'm unable to take on additional tasks after 5 p.m. because I need time to recharge." This structure conveys personal ownership, reduces defensiveness, and communicates your needs directly. Practice your statements aloud until they sound natural, confident, and calm. Timing is crucial. Choose moments when emotions are moderated, not during a heated exchange. For example, schedule a brief one-on-one with your team lead to discuss workload capacity, rather than raising it amid a frantic project huddle. By selecting an appropriate context, you ensure the conversation remains constructive and solutions-focused. Visual cues can also reinforce boundaries. If you're working from home and need uninterrupted focus, place a small sign in focus mode. Please do not disturb on your desk. If you observe a colleague's do not disturb sign, you reciprocate respect. These nonverbal signals reduce awkward interruptions and clarify expectations without speaking a word. Consider how J.K. Rowling protected her creative process. She famously wrote early drafts of Harry Potter in cafes, burying herself in headphones and a blank notebook. When friends tried to intrude on her writing time, she politely excused herself, citing her writing quota. That simple boundary, "I dedicate these hours solely to storytelling," safeguarded her imagination, leading to one of history's most beloved book series. Role-play boundary conversations with a trusted friend. Script scenarios: declining a social invitation because of an important deadline, refusing extra responsibilities that conflict with personal priorities, or asking for respect around sensitive topics. After each run, assess how your tone, language, and body posture conveyed firmness without hostility. Fine-tune until asserting boundaries feels as natural as breathing. Anticipate pushback with empathy. When you state a limit, others may feel rejected or inconvenienced. Acknowledge their perspective. "I understand this project is urgent, and I want to support you. However, I need to finish my current task by 6 p.m. to meet my own deadlines." This blend of understanding and firmness maintains rapport while upholding your boundary. Monitor your emotional response after setting boundaries. It's common to feel guilt or anxiety as you assert new limits. Record these feelings in a journal and counter them with rational affirmations. "By protecting my time, I can be more effective and present in every area of my life." Over time, these affirmations dissolve guilt and reinforce the value of self-care. Boundaries extend beyond professional contexts. In personal relationships, clarify your comfort level around topics, physical space, or commitments. If you wish to end a phone call after 20 minutes, you might say, "I've got another appointment soon. Can we wrap up in 5?" This transparent communication prevents resentment and models respect for both your own time and others. Consider a real-world example from healthcare. A nurse, overwhelmed by double shifts, learned to say, "I'm scheduled for 8 hours today and can't take extra hours without a break for patient safety." Her supervisors initially resisted, citing staffing shortages, but her clear boundary led to implementation of mandatory rest periods, improving patient care and staff well-being. By prioritizing safety and self-care, she influenced systemic change. Digital boundaries are equally vital. If you find yourself mindlessly scrolling or responding to messages at all hours, establish screen-free windows, perhaps during meals or the first hour after waking. Communicate to friends and colleagues that you'll check messages at designated times. Use app timers or do not disturb settings to enforce these limits. Gradually, you reclaim uninterrupted time for focus, rest, or meaningful connection. To gauge progress, track your boundary success rate. After a week, note each attempt to assert a limit and whether it held. Rate each outcome from 1, boundary ignored, to 5, complete respect. Reflect on factors that influence success: timing, wording, or relationship dynamics. Use these insights to refine your approach in the following week. Boundary setting also enhances storytelling impact. When you share a narrative about reclaiming your weekends, perhaps recounting the joy of undisturbed family dinner spas to describe the moment you said no to extra work, that anecdote not only illustrates boundary techniques but inspires listeners to protect their own needs. Mastering boundaries transforms overcommitment into self-respect, resentment into clarity, and burnout into balanced energy. By identifying values, crafting I statements, choosing timing wisely, rehearsing conversations, anticipating pushback, and monitoring outcomes, you create a personal ecosystem where respect flourishes. As we move into financial discipline, consider this. What boundary will you set this week to honor your well-being? You settle into your favorite chair, a warm cup of tea in hand, and review your latest bank statement. The numbers on the screen could overwhelm any one transaction's blur into a haze of habitual spending. Yet beneath that blur lies an opportunity. Financial discipline, the skill of aligning every dollar with your priorities. When you embrace discipline, you transform money from a source of stress into a tool that propels your goals, secures your future, and amplifies your freedom. Begin by constructing a budget that reflects your true values. A budget isn't a restrictive jailer, but a loyal guide, showing you where your resources flow and how to redirect them toward what matters most. Start with 3 broad categories: essentials, rent, utilities, groceries, savings and investments, and discretionary spending, dining out, subscriptions, impulse purchases. Assign realistic percentages, perhaps 50% essentials, 20% savings, 30% discretionary, then adjust over time based on your aspirations and lifestyle. The key is to set clear parameters before you swipe your card, so each purchase becomes a deliberate choice rather than an automatic reaction. Consider the story of Warren Buffett, who as a teenager refused to pay more than 25 cents for a Coke and carried his own lunch to school. That youthful frugality wasn't born of deprivation but of conscious alignment. Every dollar saved was a dollar invested in his future enterprise. Decades later, he still lives modestly and credits his disciplined habits for enabling his extraordinary investments. Buffett's example illustrates that discipline is neither extreme austerity nor blind saving. It's making consistent choices that reflect your highest goals. Next, track your spending with precision. Technology offers myriad tool apps that categorize expenses, real-time alerts, and visual dashboards. Yet you need not rely solely on digital solutions. A simple spreadsheet or a dedicated notebook can anchor your awareness. Each evening, review the day's transactions, categorize each expense, note unexpected purchases, and compare against your budgeted limits. This nightly ritual sharpens your financial radar, revealing patterns perhaps that morning coffee habit costs more than you realize, or that subscription you ignore still drains your account. When a purchase tempts you, invoke the 24-hour rule. Impulse buys thrive in the moment. Their allure fades with time. If you see something you want, new headphones, a trendy gadget, or a costly accessory, delay the decision until the next day. During that interval, evaluate whether the item aligns with your priorities. Ask, will this bring long-term value or fleeting satisfaction? More often than not, the urge dissipates, and you save both money and clutter. This simple pause is a cornerstone of discipline. It creates a built-in check that tames impulsivity. Example, Sophia, a graphic designer, noticed her daily delivery latte cost almost as much as her weekly grocery trip. Curious, she tracked every coffee-related expense for a month. The total astonished her, over $200. By brewing French press at home and reserving cafe visits for special occasions, she redirected that money into an emergency fund. 6 months later, her cushion covered unexpected car repairs without a hitch. Sophia's story shows that discipline shines brightest when you uncover hidden leaks and plug them with conscious habits. Automate your savings and bill payments to remove the temptation to spend. Set up recurring transfers, say 15% of each paycheck directly into savings accounts, retirement funds, or investment vehicles. Automating essentials like rent, utilities, and insurance ensures you never face late fees or scramble to meet obligations. These invisible safeguards protect your credit score and mental bandwidth, freeing you to focus on higher-order financial decisions rather than routine tasks. Debt repayment demands an extra layer of discipline. If you carry high-interest balances credit cards or personal loans, prioritize them through the debt snowball or debt avalanche methods. With the snowball, you pay off the smallest balance first to build momentum. With the avalanche, you tackle the highest interest rate to minimize total interest paid. Whichever path you choose, commit to paying at least the minimum plus an extra amount each month. Hearing that final zero balance click away is more than a number, it's a powerful motivator that reinforces disciplined behavior. To refine your budgeting and tracking, conduct a quarterly financial review. Treat it like a business audit. Gather your statements, assess your spending categories, and compare against your year-to-date goals. Celebrate wins perhaps. You cut dining expenses by 40% and identify areas for improvement. If your discretionary spending creeps beyond your comfort zone, revise your plan. Lower that category's allocation or introduce new rules, like a weekly cash allowance. This iterative process keeps discipline adaptive, not dogmatic. Mindful spending rituals further embed discipline into daily life. Before making any purchase, pause and ask, is this a want or a need? If it's a want, quantify its impact. By buying this book, I trade off a dinner out. This mental calculation fosters a sense of trade-off that aligns dollars with experiences rather than impulsive gratification. Some people use the 2-day receipt trick. If 2 days later the purchase still feels valuable, they keep it. If not, they return it. These small rituals cultivate financial mindfulness. Visualization reinforces commitment. Picture your midterm goal, perhaps a down payment on a home or a 6-month emergency fund. Create a simple progress chart and display it visibly. Each deposit moves the marker closer to completion, offering a tangible sense of achievement. Warren Buffett once said, "The most important thing is to keep learning." Similarly, celebrate each disciplined decision, knowing that each dollar saved is a lesson in self-mastery. Finally, weave financial discipline into your narrative to deepen its resonance. When recounting the moment you resisted buying a luxury watch, describe the inner tug-of-war itch of desire versus the promise of security and how your choice felt like reclaiming control. That story not only illustrates the technique, but also inspires others to view discipline as a path to freedom, not restriction. Financial discipline transforms chaos into clarity, stress into confidence, and anxiety into agency. By budgeting according to values, tracking with precision, delaying impulses, automating transactions, tackling debt strategically, and reviewing performance, you build an ecosystem where money supports your highest aspirations. As you prepare to delve into intentional saving, ask yourself, which spending habit will you reframe into a saving opportunity? You rise before dawn, coffee in hand, and glance at the progress chart tacked to your wall. Each green sticker marks a deposit you've made toward a future goal, perhaps a sabbatical fund, a home renovation, or that once-in-a-lifetime trip you've promised yourself. Intentional saving transforms abstract aspirations into concrete actions, turning discipline into momentum and dreams into reality. It's not merely setting aside leftovers each month. It's a purposeful strategy that aligns every surplus dollar with a specific vision. Begin by defining your saving purpose. A vague intention, "I want to save money," lacks the motivational force to endure temptation. Instead, specify, "I will save 20 million VND over 6 months for a photography workshop in Italy." That clarity infuses each transfer with meaning. Every time you redirect funds, you're one step closer to mastering your craft against a backdrop of historic European towns. Write your purpose in the present tense and display it where you see it daily. I am funding my Italian photography adventure. Next, break the saving purpose into incremental milestones. If your target is 20 million VND over 24 weeks, that equates to roughly 833,000 VND per week. Treat each milestone as a mini celebration rather than a distant goal. When you hit the first 2 million, acknowledge it, share the news with a friend, or mark it with a special moment, like a coffee from your favorite cafe. These micro-celebrations reinforce positive behavior, releasing dopamine that makes saving feel rewarding rather than punitive. An illustrative example comes from Hoa, a young architect determined to open her own studio. She committed to saving 10 million VND by December to cover initial design software licenses. Instead of waiting for a lump sum, she automated weekly transfers of 500,000 VND into a separate studio fund account. Each Friday, she watched the account balance grow, then enjoyed a modest celebratory ritual listening to her favorite playlist while sketching design ideas. By year's end, she not only reached her goal but had already mentally rehearsed the day she would launch her studio. Automation is your ally. Relying on willpower alone invites error. Life surprises often distract us from manual transfers. Instead, schedule recurring transfers on the day your salary arrives. Divide your saving purpose across multiple sub-accounts or digital envelopes, each labeled by goal: Italy workshop, emergency fund, long-term investment. Allocating each transfer programmatically ensures that the money never mingles with your disposable balance, out of sight, out of mind, yet always working toward your purpose. Visual cues maintain motivation. Use a savings tracker app or a simple bar chart on paper, updating it weekly. Color code-filled segments to highlight progress. Each time you swipe your card for an impulsive purchase, glance at the empty portions of your tracker. That visual gap triggers a moment of pause, reminding you where your priorities lie. When you resist unnecessary spending, mentally place a virtual sticker on your chart. This cognitive reward compounds alongside your financial gains. Cultivate saving rituals around these milestones. Perhaps you start each month by reviewing your saving purpose aloud, re-experiencing the excitement of your future adventure. Or you end each week by sending yourself a brief email to note challenges, unexpected expenses, or temptations, and how you overcame them. That ritual reinforces accountability and transforms saving from a silent ledger entry into an active habit woven into your routine. The psychology of loss aversion can also bolster your strategy. Link savings to personal accountability and social circles. For example, when you set your goal, publicly telling friends or family, you create a social contract. Missing a transfer carries the discomfort of admitting failure. To heighten this effect, form a savers circle, a small group that shares weekly updates. The desire to report progress instead of setbacks spurs you to honor your commitments. Intentional saving also benefits from roundup features on banking apps, which automatically round purchases up to the nearest 1,000 VND and deposit the difference into savings. These microtransactions accumulate without conscious effort. Over time, the spare change builds into substantial contributions, akin to planting seeds that germinate into a robust fund. Maintain flexibility by reviewing your progress monthly. If unexpected expenses force you to skip a transfer, adjust the plan rather than abandon it. Extend your timeline by a week or temporarily reduce the transfer amount, but recommit immediately. Avoid all or nothing thinking. Consistency even at a reduced pace beats perfect execution, followed by giving up. Document these adjustments in your journal, noting how you redirected priorities without losing sight of the overarching purpose. Consider a case from personal finance communities. Min, an early career teacher, used a challenge month to kickstart her saving habit. In January, she vowed to save an extra 10% of her income by cutting discretionary spending: no eating out, no new clothes, minimal entertainment. She tracked every dong saved, and at month's end, was amazed to see her saving habit ingrained. The experiment taught her that saving could coexist with a fulfilling lifestyle when anchored by deliberate choices. As you embed intentional saving into your life, cultivate gratitude for each milestone. When you deposit funds, pause to acknowledge what that money represents: a gateway to growth, security, or joy. This act transforms saving from an exercise in restraint to a celebration of possibility. Just as seed savings grow into wealth, that mindset shift fosters abundance rather than deprivation. Finally, integrate saving stories into your narrative. When sharing your journey, perhaps immortalizing your first solo trip through Tuscany, describe the moment you transferred your initial funds, the small thrill that accompanied it, and the subtle tension you resisted when the urge to spend arose. That personal touch illustrates the technique and inspires listeners to undertake their own saving odyssey. Intentional saving is a dance between discipline and aspiration. By defining specific purposes, automating transfers, tracking progress visually, celebrating milestones, leveraging psychology, and adapting flexibly, you transform passive withholding into an empowered pursuit. Each dong you set aside signals your commitment to a richer future one. You create dollar by deliberate dollar. As we approach investing wisely, ask yourself, which saving milestone will you celebrate first? You sit at your desk after tracking a month of disciplined saving, the balances in your various accounts ready to move from cash into assets that work for you. Investing wisely transforms savings into growth engines, deploying capital across opportunities that align with your goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon. When you learn to invest with strategy rather than speculation, you elevate your financial trajectory from preservation to prosperity. Begin by defining your investment objectives. Different goals demand different approaches. A retirement fund 20 years away favors low-cost, broad-market index funds, while a short-term house down payment might rely on conservative, interest-bearing accounts. Clarifying whether you seek growth, income, or capital preservation helps you allocate funds to the right vehicles and avoid chasing fads that misalign with your purpose. Next, understand the power of diversification. Legendary investor Ray Dalio compares diversification to not putting all your eggs in one basket with a twist. You also balance baskets so that if one fails, others compensate. Spread your investments across asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, and within classes, domestic and international. This mosaic reduces volatility by smoothing performance across economic cycles. For many individual investors, a simple 60/40 portfolio of 60% equities and 40% bonds provides balanced growth and stability. Adjust ratios as your risk tolerance evolves. Choose low-cost investment vehicles to maximize returns. Research shows that fees-expense ratios, transaction costs, advisory fees erode performance over time. Opt for index funds or exchange-traded funds, ETFs, with minimal expense ratios. Many brokerage platforms now offer commission-free trading. By reducing drag, you ensure that market gains accrue to your benefit rather than to fund managers. Allocate a portion of your portfolio to dollar-cost averaging. Instead of lump sum investing, commit to purchasing a fixed amount of an asset at regular intervals, say $500, into a global equity ETF each month. This technique mitigates the risk of market timing by buying more shares when prices are low and fewer when prices are high, smoothing your average purchase cost. Over time, dollar-cost averaging can enhance returns by avoiding emotional buying at peaks and panic selling at troughs. Assess each investment's fundamentals before committing. For individual stocks, study financial statements, revenue growth, profit margins, debt levels, and competitive positioning. Evaluate ETFs by examining their underlying index, sector exposure, and liquidity. Avoid the temptation of hot tips or fads. Instead, base decisions on objective data and long-term trends. If you lack the expertise, consult a fiduciary advisor who is obliged to act in your best interest, not one who earns commissions from specific product sales. Consider tax implications. In many jurisdictions, tax-advantaged accounts retirement plans, health savings accounts, education savings accounts offer tax deductions or deferred growth. Maximize contributions to these vehicles first, then allocate taxable brokerage accounts. Strategic tax planning can enhance net returns by reducing your overall tax burden. Monitor and rebalance periodically. As markets fluctuate, your asset mix drifts from your target allocation stocks may outperform bonds, skewing your risk profile. Semi-annual or annual rebalancing, selling the asset class that has grown beyond target, and buying the one that fell below restores balance and enforces buy low, sell high. Keep transaction costs in mind and avoid over-frequent trading, which can incur fees and reduce tax efficiency. Leverage diversification beyond financial instruments. Consider alternative investments such as peer-to-peer lending, real estate crowdfunding, or precious metals for further balance. Allocate only a small percentage, 5 to 10% of your portfolio to alternatives that you understand, using them to hedge against specific risks like inflation or currency fluctuations. Educate yourself continuously. Subscribe to respected financial publications, listen to investor podcasts, and read foundational texts like Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor or Burton Malkiel's A Random Walk Down Wall Street. Building knowledge protects you from emotional pitfalls and hypes, empowering disciplined, data-driven decisions. Example: Lena, a marketing consultant, began investing with a simple plan: 70% in a global stock ETF, 20% in a bond fund, and 10% in a real estate investment trust. She automated monthly contributions and rebalanced every 6 months. Over 5 years, her portfolio grew annually by an average of 8%, outperforming local bank deposits by a wide margin. Lena attributes her success to sticking with a clear strategy rather than chasing market trends. Finally, weave investing stories into your narrative. When describing how you allocated your first investment, share the moment you chose between a hot stock tip and a low-cost index fund. Detail the research that guided you, the nerves you felt, and the satisfaction of disciplined decision-making. These personal insights humanize investing and inspire confidence in listeners. Investing wisely means marrying purpose with prudence. By defining objectives, diversifying thoughtfully, minimizing costs, dollar-cost averaging, analyzing fundamentals, planning for taxes, rebalancing, exploring alternatives, and learning continuously, you set the stage for sustainable growth. Your capital becomes a powerful collaborator, working behind the scenes to build the future you envision. As we move to Money Mindset Reflect, which investment principle will you adopt first? You awake to headlines shouting market crashes, economic uncertainty, and personal finance gurus promising quick fixes. Anxiety tugs at your mind, whispering that money is a scarce resource destined to slip through your fingers. Yet, beneath those fears lies a transformative insight. Your mindset about money, your beliefs, biases, and emotional associations shapes your financial behaviors more than any spreadsheet ever could. By cultivating an empowered money mindset, you retrain your internal narrative to view wealth as attainable, opportunities as abundant, and yourself as capable of stewarding resources wisely. Begin by uncovering your money story. Throughout childhood and adolescence, you internalize messages about wealth. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy, or I'll never be good with numbers. These beliefs linger in your subconscious, guiding decisions and triggering emotions. To surface them, set aside 30 minutes for reflective journaling. Ask, what did I hear about money from my parents or community? How did early financial experience, allowance, jobs, financial struggles shape my feelings about wealth? Write freely without editing. This raw material reveals your money scripts, the unspoken rules that govern your financial choices. Next, challenge limiting beliefs through evidence audits. Suppose you believed, I'm terrible at budgeting. List real instances where you've successfully managed resources, perhaps completing a project on a modest budget, negotiating a lower rent, or making a profitable side sale. Counter each limiting belief with specific achievements. Then craft empowering affirmations. I am capable of creating and following a budget that aligns with my goals. Place these statements where you'll see them daily on your phone, lock screen, bathroom mirror, or workspace. Over weeks, repetition rewires neural pathways, replacing scarcity mindsets with confidence. Language deeply influences thought pattern. Replace I can't afford this with I choose to allocate funds differently. Swap I'm bad with money for I'm learning to manage money effectively. These subtle shifts reframe challenges as choices, restoring agency. Experiment for a day. Consciously monitor every time you speak about money, internally or aloud, and rephrase self-defeating statements. Notice how this practice nudges you toward proactive behaviors, like seeking knowledge or adjusting spending. Visualization accelerates mindset shifts. Imagine your future self who has achieved financial goals debt-free, with an emergency fund and growing investments. Visualize their routines, reviewing budgets calmly, celebrating small wins, exploring investment options confidently. Feel the pride, relief, and freedom that accompany those achievements. Spend 5 minutes each morning in this mental rehearsal, soaking in the emotions. Your brain interprets these vivid visions as real experiences, priming you to adopt the habits and attitudes of that future self. Money biases often lurk unnoticed, Confirmation bias drives you to notice stories that validate your fears market downturns or personal finance catastrophes, while discounting positive signals. To counter this, curate a balanced information diet. Subscribe to financial news sources that highlight both risks and opportunities. For every sensational crash headline you read, seek an analysis that explores underlying resilience, such as long-term market recoveries or emerging investment trends. This mindful consumption fosters a realistic, balanced perspective. Anchoring bias can also skew decisions. If your first salary was low, you may unconsciously measure all future earnings against that anchor, dismissing higher incomes as unattainable. To break this, expose yourself to success stories beyond your initial frame. Listen to interviews with people who entered your industry later in life and secured significant financial growth. Observing diverse trajectories expands your sense of possibility and weakens faulty anchors. Emotional intelligence enriches your money mindset. When you feel envy at a friend's new purchase, pause and explore the emotion. Ask, what need does that purchase fulfill? Creativity? Comfort? Status? Recognizing the underlying desire allows you to address it authentically, perhaps, by planning a purposeful purchase aligned with your values, or celebrating the friend's success and seeking creative inspiration. This self-awareness prevents impulsive spending driven by social comparison and redirects energy toward investments in your own well-being. Practical experimentation cements mindset shifts. Create a money challenge each month. 1 month. Practice a gratitude swapery time you feel dissatisfaction. List 3 non-monetary things you appreciate. Another month, track all choices where you opt to invest time or resources into personal growth rather than material goods. Document these experiments in a dedicated journal, noting insights and emotional responses. Over time, you discover which practices most effectively shift your relationship with money from fear-driven avoidance to curiosity-driven exploration. An illustrative example comes from a young entrepreneur named Lan. She grew up believing business is too risky. After identifying this belief, she began reframing. Calculated risk brings opportunity. She conducted small-scale experiments, selling handcrafted goods online with minimal startup costs. Each success, however modest, reinforced her new mindset. Over 6 months, her confidence grew. She scaled her product line, and her revenue tripled. Lan credits her breakthrough not to market conditions, but to shifting her internal narrative about risk and reward. Professional guidance can accelerate transformation. A financial coach or mindset mentor helps you detect blind spots, offers accountability, and provides tailored strategies. Even a short series of sessions can surface unconscious beliefs and equip you with tools, visualization scripts, affirmation frameworks, or behavior tracking systems to sustain growth. Finally, integrate money mindset stories into your narrative. When recounting a personal finance challenge, perhaps resisting the urge to sell investments during a market dip, pause to describe the mental dialogue, initial panic, the reframed perspective that markets historically recover, and the calm decision to hold. Sharing these inner moments demystifies mindset work and offers listeners a blueprint for their own transformations. By reshaping your beliefs through reflection, evidence audits, language shifts, visualization, balanced information, bias awareness, emotional intelligence, and practical challenges, you redefine your money mindset. No longer a passive receptor of fate, you become an empowered steward of resources, capable of navigating economic landscapes with resilience and creativity. As we prepare for mindful spending, ask yourself, which money belief will you challenge today? Every purchase writes a line in the story of your life. When you spend mindfully, you transform transactions into deliberate choices that reflect your values and priorities. Mindful spending isn't about deprivation, it's about conscious alignment. Instead of letting impulsive desires drive your wallet, you learn to pause, evaluate, and act in harmony with your deepest goals. Begin by distinguishing needs from wants. Needs sustain your well-being: housing, food, essential transportation, basic health care. Wants, though tempting, often satisfy momentary impulses: designer shoes, gourmet coffee runs, the latest gadget. To sharpen this distinction, implement the pause and probe technique. Whenever an urge to spend arises, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. Do I genuinely need this? Will this serve me beyond the initial thrill? And which deeper goal does this support or hinder? That brief introspection disrupts autopilot spending and opens space for intentional decisions. Consider the story of Tuan, a young software engineer who found himself buying the newest phone model each year. After tracking his expenses, he realized these upgrades consumed his entire discretionary budget, leaving little for travel or professional development. He experimented with pause and probe. Before ordering the phone, he waited 48 hours. During that time, he reflected on his priorities and realized his true passion was exploring new cultures. He redirected funds toward a trip abroad, returning with fresh perspectives and renewed creativity at work. By mindfully redirecting spending, he replaced temporary satisfaction with lasting fulfillment. Next, create a spending manifesto. Draft a personal document outlining your spending principles, for example. I will prioritize experiences over possessions. I will invest in tools that enhance my skills. Or I will reserve at least 10% of my income for giving. Keep it succinct to more than 5 guidelines and display it prominently. Before each purchase decision, glance at your manifesto. Aligning every dong spent with these principles ensures that each expense reinforces your chosen narrative. Visual triggers reinforce mindfulness. Use a dedicated wallet or envelope system. Assign one pocket for essential spending, another for discretionary, and a third for savings. When the discretionary pocket empties, you pause until the next refill. This tactile constraint brings awareness to each expenditure and prevents overdrawing your intended budget. Digital alternative spending category apps that restrict card usage when limits are reached offer similar guardrails. Embrace value maximization. With every potential purchase, ask, what alternative use of this money offers greater value? If you're tempted by a $50 restaurant meal, imagine how that same $50 could cover a month's subscription to an online course that advances your career. By comparing options in terms of long-term worth skill growth, health, relationships, you recalibrate your spending toward investable choices. Ritualize reflection on your spending habits. At the end of each week, review every discretionary purchase. For each, note whether it delivered lasting satisfaction or faded quickly. Classify outcomes: high value, sustained joy or utility; moderate value, temporary pleasure without regret; or low value, buyer's remorse or neglect. Celebrate instances of high-value spending and analyze low-value ones without self-judgment. This evidence-based feedback teaches you which types of purchases truly enhance your life. Leverage community accountability to bolster mindful spending. Form a spending circle with friends or colleagues who share financial goals. Each week, disclose one non-essential purchase and receive constructive feedback. Did it align with your values? Would you make the same choice? This transparent practice transforms solitary decisions into communal learning, exposing blind spots and inspiring collective growth. Mindful spending extends to banking and subscription services, audit recurring charges, quarterly streaming platforms, apps, memberships. Question: am I fully utilizing this service? If not, pause or cancel until genuine need returns. Many subscription traps stem from inertia. Mindful auditing reclaims resources for priorities. One entrepreneur discovered she was paying for 6 digital tools but actively using only 2. She consolidated her subscriptions, saved hundreds per year, and redirected the freed funds into marketing her side business. Cultivate gratitude for every purchase. After completing a mindful buy, whether a new pair of work shoes chosen for comfort and longevity, or a cooking class that expanded your culinary skills, take a moment to appreciate the value it brings. Gratitude rituals, such as jotting a brief note about why the purchase mattered, reinforce positive spending behaviors and deepen your connection to mindful choices. Apply mindful spending to gift giving. Instead of defaulting to generic presents, consider the recipient's values, experiences, learning, or charitable contributions in their name. Thoughtful gifts strengthen relationships and align with your broader ethos of purposeful spending. When you source gifts that reflect understanding and care, both giver and receiver experience heightened satisfaction. Finally, weave mindful spending into your storytelling. When recounting how you resisted a tempting sale, describe the internal dialogue, the initial allure, the probing questions you asked, and the sense of empowerment when you aligned the purchase with your values. By sharing these moments, you model mindful decision-making and invite listeners to embark on their own spending transformation. Mindful spending transforms every transaction into an affirmation of purpose. By pausing to probe needs versus wants, crafting a personal manifesto, using visual and digital triggers, maximizing value, reflecting weekly, engaging community, auditing subscriptions, practicing gratitude, and gifting intentionally, you shape your financial narrative with intention and integrity. As we move to consistency builds, success consider, which conscious spending choice will you celebrate this week? Dawn breaks on a familiar scene. Your to-do list, half-checked items, and habits both productive and dormant vying for attention. Amidst the swirl, one truth stands out. Consistency builds success. Small, repeated actions, daily reflections, weekly reviews, monthly milestones compound into transformative results. Like drops of water carving canyons over eons, disciplined routines erode barriers and sculpt a life aligned with your deepest aspirations. Consider Benjamin Franklin's morning ritual. He awoke at dawn, recited questions, "What good shall I do today?" and reviewed the virtues he aimed to embody. Each evening, he reflected on his conduct, marking successes and slip-ups. Over years, this iterative process refined his character, making him a polymath admired for wit, wisdom, and civic leadership. Franklin's secret wasn't genius alone, but the power of continuous, incremental improvement. Begin by selecting 3 core habits that support your overarching goals, perhaps a daily mind scan, a gratitude journal entry, and a weekly financial review. Anchor each habit to a consistent trigger in your routine, upon waking, after lunch, or before bed. Pairing new actions with existing behaviors leverages neural pathways, making consistency feel effortless. Want to cement your habit? Use the habit stack technique. After your morning coffee, complete your gratitude log. After dinner, review your budget. Before sleep, scan your thoughts. Next, track your habits visually. A simple habit tracker grid of days and habits transforms abstract intentions into tangible patterns. Each time you complete a habit, mark the square with a bold check. Over weeks, unbroken chains of checks create visual momentum that fuels motivation. Missing a day interrupts the streak, a gentle nudge to recommit. Seeing progress at a glance reminds you of the cumulative power of consistency. Ritualize your reviews. At week's end, conduct a consistency audit. Note which habits held strong and where you faltered. Reflect without judgment. Identify obstacles, time pressure, environmental distractions, low motivation, and brainstorm targeted solutions. If evening reflections suffer due to late meetings, adjust the trigger. Shift the habit to early morning or during lunch. This adaptive approach ensures your routines evolve with your life rather than becoming rigid obligations. Accountability amplifies consistency. Share your habit goals with a peer or mentor and schedule brief check-ins weekly or bi-weekly. When someone else expects your progress report, you're more likely to honor commitments. Better yet, form a small consistency cohort that supports and challenges one another. Celebrate collective wins and troubleshoot setbacks together. Social reinforcement cements individual discipline into a shared culture of growth. Embrace the 2-minute rule to overcome inertia. Break daunting habits into micro steps you can complete in 2 minutes or less. Want to journal daily? Start by writing just 1 sentence. Craving meditation practice? Begin with 2 minutes of mindful breathing. Consistency breeds identity. Completing tiny actions daily reinforces the belief, I am someone who shows up. Over time, you naturally extend the habit's duration, transforming 2 minutes into 20. Leverage technology wisely. Habit tracking apps can send reminders and visualize streaks, but avoid notification overload. Choose tools that integrate seamlessly and require minimal friction. A calendar blocking your reflection time or a simple spreadsheet can be more effective than flashy apps. The key is consistency of practice, not complexity of tools. Cultivate a growth mindset around consistency. Expect fluctuations and view lapses as feedback rather than failure. If you miss 3 days of your morning mind scan, resist self-criticism. Instead, Analyze the pattern. Were you traveling? Exhausted? Adjust the practice perhaps. Switch to evening scans until routines stabilize. This flexibility ensures that consistency remains a sustainable, nourishing force rather than a source of guilt. Consider the composite effect. A daily 1% improvement compounds into a 37-fold gain over a year. Whether mastering speech, purpose, silence, thought mastery, focus, positivity, emotional control, responsive dialogue, boundaries, financial discipline, saving, investing, money mindset, or mindful spending, each incremental refinement accumulates. Consistency stitches these elements into an integrated tapestry of growth. Finally, weave consistency into your storytelling. When recounting your journey, perhaps the moment you realized your morning gratitude practice had reshaped your perspective, highlight the small, repetitive choices that led to that breakthrough. Describe how a 2-minute pause evolved into a transformative habit that grounded your days. Those narratives illuminate the often invisible power of routine, inspiring listeners to trust the process. Consistency builds success through repeated, intentional action, adaptive reflection, and supportive accountability. By anchoring new habits to existing routines, tracking progress, conducting regular audits, applying micro steps, and maintaining a growth mindset, you transform fleeting efforts into enduring transformation. As our journey draws to a close, remember that mastery of speech, thoughts, emotions, and finances, not achieved in grand, isolated moments, but through the steady accumulation of purposeful choices. In these pages, you have encountered principles ranging from the power of precise words to the art of silent presence. From framing your internal dialogue to enacting financial strategies that align resources with aspirations, each section offers a tool. Consistency weaves them together into a resilient framework. Your voice gains resonance when you harness intentional speech and silence, guiding listeners with clarity and amplifying impact. Your mind finds sanctuary when you master internal narratives, focus on North Star objectives, and cultivate optimism that reframes challenges. Relationships deepen as you respond thoughtfully, regulate emotions, and erect boundaries that safeguard mutual respect. Your financial landscape transforms when discipline channels spending, saving, and investing into purposeful endeavors, while mindful attitudes reshape money from threat to ally. Yet the true alchemy occurs in the intersections where speech and thought coalesce, where emotional control informs response, where financial discipline absorbs mindset shifts. It is here that your transformation becomes uniquely yours, fueled by the agency you reclaim through each deliberate act. No single chapter holds all the answers. Rather, success emerges from the mosaic of practices you integrate, adapt, and sustain over time. Start today by revisiting one insight that resonated most deeply. Perhaps it was the revelation that silence amplifies your words, or the realization that a 2-minute habit can cascade into profound change. Reconnect with that concept, anchor it to a daily ritual, and observe how the tiniest adjustments ripple outward. Celebrate initial victories with gratitude, knowing they represent the first stones laid in the foundation of lasting growth. Imagine your life a decade hence. Your confident voice opening rooms, your composed mind navigating complexity, your resilient spirit embracing both triumphs and setbacks, your financial choices crafting stability and opportunity. That vision does not remain hypothetical. It is the natural outcome of the small, consistent seeds you plant today. Each word spoken, each boundary set, each dong saved, each moment of reflection contributes to a legacy of personal mastery. Action without reflection risks drift. Reflection without action invites stagnation. Therefore, adopt a cadence of doing and reviewing. Let habit tracking light your path. Let community accountability sustain momentum, and let a growth mindset transform obstacles into experiments. When you stumble, lean into curiosity rather than self-reproach. When you soar, reinforce your practices to embed new heights into your routine. Above all, treat yourself with compassion and persistence. The path to mastery is not linear. It bends through periods of rapid growth and times of plateau. Honor both phases as essential to the journey. Trust that the consistency rituals you cultivate will anchor you, even when progress seems imperceptible, and that the cumulative effect of your efforts will reveal itself in moments of breakthrough you cannot yet foresee. This audiobook's promise is not to deliver overnight miracles, but to empower you with principles and processes that, when lived daily, reshape your identity and destiny. Embrace the continuous narrative, your personal story of mastery that unfolds one deliberate step at a time.